Well, social media has become a big part of our lives as people, while it is being hailed for having changed the way we communicate and also influencing major world events. Experts are warning that it could be detrimental. Clinical psychologist Dr Saths Cooper is here in studio with me to chat about this. Doctor, good morning to you. Thank you so very much for joining us here on Afro Breakfast.
My pleasure.
As a start, what is social media addiction, and how does one know that they're addicted? And I ask with such trepidation on my part, worried that I might be addicted myself.
Well, look, if one is in this kind of conversation and one feels one needs to look at one's phone, whether it pings or not, that's the beginning of the sign.
First warning sign.
First warning sign. If you in a meeting, if you in a social gathering, if you're in an intimate situation, whether it's a dinner, whether it's in bed, and so on, and you think you need to look at your device, that's another sign. And the kind of thing we often see, we go to a restaurant and there'll be 4 people sitting around a table having dinner, but at least a couple of them are on their phones.
Correct.
It's one thing taking the picture of that dish and posting it, but it's another not engaging with who you're supposed to be engaging with because you feel the need to respond to your device. So the devices have taken over, in a sense, our lives. And this has permeated all parts of the world. There isn't a part of the world really that hasn't been impacted by these devices, which have also replaced people. The joblessness that's increasing the world over is because of this. There is this addictive quality because one feels compelled to relate to the machine rather than to people. And it hasn't been described as an addiction formally yet, but it's bound to be very soon. If one finds that one is reliant on that machine more than necessary, the start of addiction begins.
Currently, this is not a formal clinical diagnosis, as you've just alluded to. Do you think that at some point it will be? I mean, I suppose social media and its effects are relatively a new concept to the world of psychology.
Well, look, Apple just became the $1 trillion company, and iPad addiction may be something that we seriously need to look at, because if we're spending time more on social media than socially with other people, we're becoming more isolated, we're becoming more removed from the realities in our world, which is people. We become socialized through other people, and we ought not to be socialized by social media, which is replacing our ordinary socialization. So the worst thing is to give kids the device so that the kids begin to engage themselves in the device, then learn the other skills that are important for human development. So all the emotional, cognitive, and other skills get thwarted by this intercession.
So my concern, Doctor, and there's been a lot of shootings in the US, for example. And when one looks at, the guilty party who would have shot up, whether pupils and teachers at a school, it's always someone described as someone who's constantly here on the computer, technology, all of that. Is there any kind of link? Is there a link to the fact that, someone who's so into their technology and is not really in tune with what's going on outside and is therefore off in terms of how they then relate to other people? I mean, this is just a scenario, but I'm just wondering, as you speak, if there is some kind of a link to that.
Oh, yes. That's a loner. That's a person who finds more engagement with machines than he or she does with ordinary people. So that person has removed himself from the world around them, can continue just dealing with whatever, and probably makes their money, gets their kicks through that. And the reality of human development is being thwarted. The very fact that we're calling it social media is for me also part of that problem, because we're saying social instead of calling it the technology that it is. You know, this fourth or fifth industrial revolution has overcome us. It's there to stay. It will continue to impact on our lives unless we put a brake on it. So the first thing is, don't allow our kids, infants in particular, to access this unnecessarily. Have quality time that you spend with your children. And previously it used to be television. Put the child, plonk the child in front of a television. Television has now become interactive, and it removes the individual more and more from what they ought to be doing. The sense of discovery is through somebody else's experience that's been put on the World Wide Web. And that is dangerous for any of us, because we're going to lose those qualities that make us human, relating as human beings. Now, we communicate more than any other generation anywhere in history, but we're not communicating with each other. So you have the President of the United States who can't communicate with his people except using the device. Yeah. You know, so it tells you what is happening. And we need to say, if we're spending much more, I'll be generous here, and say much more than an hour of our 24 hours, our day, on the device, on anything else, unless it's part of our work, to be, you know, computer involved, then there's a problem.
Now, and obviously I've taken the example too far in terms of the shootings in US schools, but let's talk about the smaller, and I put it in inverted commas, but the smaller sort of consequences. What are the negative effects really of us as a society being so addicted to social media? And I'm going to use the word addiction quite loosely.
Okay. Well, look, this is an addiction. You know, addictions develop because this is something new, and the scientists, the medical and behavioral people will and are currently dealing with it, for instance, at the World Health Organization, to look at whether is this now becoming something we need to worry about. And there have been warnings over time, over the last 20 or so years, about the usage of cell phones. One, it's a microwave and other device. So it's quite dangerous for one's health, physical health. Now we're talking about one's mental well-being, and these can be a bane as well as a boon. So it's important for us to be in contact and in communication, but where the downside is if we become totally reliant on it instead of us controlling the machine. We don't want to be replaced by machines. We ought not to be replaced by machines. But these little devices are fast becoming part of our makeup. So in the morning when you get up, you brush your teeth, you do everything else, do your makeup, look smart, the phone is part of what you carry with you.
And it's also moved to a point where I suppose some social media platforms have become sort of powerful in terms of dictating the narrative. And I wonder from a psychological perspective what effect it has then on people. For example, a person could probably get, you know, dismissed or fired because, you know, something that they said on social media, and other people taking it and wanting that person to, you know, things like that.
Well, look, there is that intrusive quality. Facebook and others have acknowledged that publicly. They have acknowledged complicity in this because they use the usage patterns of the individuals to feed you with information. So in my case, for instance, Facebook, I have Facebook on all devices, but when it comes onto my computer, it goes into junk mail. So I have to go and look at it and say, okay, here's my Facebook friend. Do I respond to this or not? And what's the need to respond? And that's because an artificial imposition has been created that you must respond to this. You must be part of it. So there's become a peer pressure, if you like, through these machines now determining what you should want, what you should like. Then they sell you products that you think, if I don't get X, then I will be really uncool in what I do. So there's also psychology that's been involved in shaping the ringtones and in the intrusiveness. Because when you get that intrusiveness, you think, I need to respond. You know, even when you're in a life and death situation, you're probably then going to be distracted by your phone. And your alertness then, your ability to deal with harsh reality becomes blunted because the machine is interceding. This machine can help you in a crisis, but if it institutes crisis in you to be only relating to this as your primary mechanism, your relationship with your partner, your spouse, your children, your parents, your friends, in your work environment is going to be damaged. And that question that you raised originally, nowadays, headhunters, HR people routinely look at your profile that's out there and check what you've done, what you've said. If you hit a border post in certain countries, they already immediately they plug in your name, or your profile goes into the scanner, or your thumbprints or whatever they use. It now pulls out that Cooper said X against, say, the Americans. And they say, oh, so you attacked our country. Go back.
My goodness. So, all right, you talk about this, you're actually really scaring me at this point, but you talk about the intrusiveness and that need to respond. How do we become more conscious of the fact that we are going too far ourselves when it comes to not sort of stopping ourselves from having to respond and having to constantly, how do I know that I've reached that point? I mean, for me personally on Twitter, if I don't want to respond, I just, will block the person and move on with my life. But I don't know that a lot of people can do that.
No, the need to belong has become more pressing, especially in a society where there's danger out there. In our society, it's physically and psychologically dangerous to be alone somewhere out there, because you can't really walk the streets, you can't walk around your neighborhood. So that need to then fall in on something else which is more comforting becomes alluring for you. It's like alcoholism, it's like drug addiction. The first thing is the denialism. I say, no, I'm fine. I can have 3 drinks and drive. One shouldn't. Well, I'm smoking because I enjoy it. I know I'm going to die, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's a recognition. But if we don't recognize it, that's a problem. Anyone who says, well, I'm not addicted, needs to look very carefully at how much time they spend, because this is very intrusive. You can be in the toilet, you can be in the bath, you can be in bed, you can be doing intimate things, and the ping is there, and you feel, oh my God, I need to respond.
I've switched off my pings, by the way, I just have to say. It was such an insightful conversation. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for giving me, myself, a wake-up call at this point. Dr. Saths Cooper, we appreciate your time here on Afro Worldview. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right, let's take a short break. Do stay with Afro Worldview.